In the affluent suburb of Sycamore Grove, nestled among manicured lawns and sprawling estates, lived Alicia Hartley, a 35-year-old yoga instructor known for her serene demeanor and captivating presence. Her husband, Dr. Nathan Hartley, a 40-year-old neurosurgeon, was respected in medical circles for his groundbreaking research and steady hands. To their neighbors and friends, the Hartleys embodied the perfect marriage, successful, attractive, and seemingly devoted to each other. But beneath the surface of their picturesque life, cracks had begun to form. Alicia, once passionate about her marriage and career, found herself increasingly restless. The long hours Nathan spent at the hospital left her feeling neglected and unfulfilled. She threw herself into her yoga practice, seeking solace in the physical and mental discipline it provided. It was during one of her advanced classes that Alicia first met Ethan Reeves, a 28-year-old aspiring actor with piercing blue eyes and a magnetic smile. Ethan had recently moved to Sycamore Grove from Los Angeles, chasing his dreams of stardom while working part-time as a barista. From the moment he stepped into Alicia's studio, there was an undeniable connection between them. As weeks passed, Ethan became a regular at Alicia's classes, always lingering after to chat. Their conversations, initially about yoga and meditation, soon delved into deeper, more personal territory. Alicia found herself opening up to Ethan in ways she hadn't with anyone in years, not even Nathan. She confided her frustrations with her marriage, her unfulfilled dreams of traveling the world, and her growing sense of isolation in Sycamore Grove. Ethan, in turn, shared his struggles as an aspiring actor, the rejections he faced, and his determination to make it big. His youthful enthusiasm and unwavering belief in his dreams rekindled a fire in Alicia that she thought had long been extinguished. She began to see Ethan as not just a student or a friend, but as a symbol of the life she could have had, free, passionate, and full of possibilities. One evening, after a particularly intense yoga session, Alicia and Ethan found themselves alone in the studio. The air was charged with unspoken tension as they moved closer to each other. Without a word, they kissed, unleashing months of pent-up desire and forbidden attraction. It was a moment of passion that would set in motion a chain of events neither could have foreseen. As their affair blossomed, Alicia felt alive in ways she hadn't in years. She reveled in the secret meetings, the stolen glances, and the thrill of sneaking around. Ethan worshipped her, making her feel desired and appreciated in ways Nathan hadn't in a long time. But with the excitement came crushing guilt. Alicia knew she was betraying Nathan, a man who, despite his shortcomings, had always been loyal and supportive. Nathan, consumed by his work at the hospital, remained oblivious to the changes in his wife. He noticed her improved mood and renewed energy, but attributed it to her dedication to yoga. Little did he know that while he was saving lives in the operating room, his own marriage was slipping through his fingers. As summer turned to fall, Alicia's affair with Ethan intensified. They began taking greater risks, meeting in public places, and even spending a weekend together at a secluded cabin under the guise of a yoga retreat. Alicia knew she was playing with fire, but she couldn't bring herself to end things with Ethan. The passion and excitement he brought to her life had become addictive. As autumn leaves began to fall in Sycamore Grove, Alicia's world was about to be turned upside down. One crisp October morning, she woke up feeling nauseous and dizzy. At first, she dismissed it as a simple flu, but as days passed and the symptoms persisted, a gnawing suspicion took root. With trembling hands, she took a pregnancy test, her heart pounding as she waited for the results. The two pink lines that appeared sent her world spinning. Alicia was pregnant, and she was almost certain the father was Ethan, not Nathan. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, washing away the fantasy world she had constructed. She knew she had to make a decision, and quickly. Nathan had always wanted children, but their busy lives and her secret reluctance had delayed their family planning. Now, she found herself carrying a child, but not her husband's. Torn between her loyalty to Nathan and her passionate affair with Ethan, Alicia confided in her closest friend, Vanessa. Over coffee in a quiet cafe, Alicia poured out her heart, tears streaming down her face as she recounted her affair and the unexpected pregnancy. Vanessa listened without judgment, offering a shoulder to cry on, and a voice of reason in Alicia's chaotic world. "You need to tell Nathan the truth," Vanessa urged gently. "He deserves to know, and you can't keep living this double life. It's not fair to anyone. Not to Nathan, not to Ethan, and certainly not to you or the baby." Alicia nodded, knowing Vanessa was right, but the thought of confessing everything to Nathan filled her with dread. She decided to tell Ethan first, hoping that his reaction might help her decide what to do. That evening, Alicia met Ethan in their usual spot, a secluded corner of the local park. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, she broke the news to him. Ethan's reaction was not what she had expected. Instead of joy or even shock, his face clouded with anger and fear. "Are you sure it's mine?" he demanded, his voice harsh. "How do you know it's not your husband's?" Alicia was taken aback by his response. "I'm almost certain it's yours, Ethan. Nathan and we haven't been intimate in months." Ethan began to pace, running his hands through his hair in agitation. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "Do you have any idea what this could do to my career? I'm on the verge of a big break, Alicia. I can't be tied down with a baby in a scandal." His words cut through Alicia like a knife. In that moment, she saw Ethan for who he truly was, not the passionate, supportive man she thought she loved, but a selfish, ambitious actor who saw her as a potential obstacle to his dreams. "I thought you loved me," Alicia whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan's expression softened slightly, but his words remained cold. "I do care for you, Alicia, but this changes everything. I'm not ready to be a father. I can't give up everything I've worked for." As Alicia watched Ethan walk away, leaving her alone in the darkening park, she felt a resolve harden within her. She knew what she had to do. With a heavy heart, she made her way home, preparing herself for the most difficult conversation of her life. Nathan was in his study when Alicia entered the house. She found him poring over medical journals, his brow furrowed in concentration. Taking a deep breath, she called out to him. "Nathan, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Nathan looked up, concern immediately etching itself across his features as he took in Alicia's tear-stained face. "What's wrong, darling?" he asked, rising from his chair. Alicia took a seat across from him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Slowly, haltingly, she began to speak. She told him everything, about her feelings of loneliness and neglect, her affair with Ethan, and finally, the pregnancy. As she spoke, she watched Nathan's expression change from concern to shock, then to anger and hurt. When she finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. Nathan sat motionless, his face a mask of pain and betrayal. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and controlled. "How could you, Alicia? After everything we've built together, how could you throw it all away for some fling with a boy?" Alicia flinched at his words, but she knew she deserved them. "I'm so sorry, Nathan," she whispered. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I was weak, and I made a terrible mistake." Nathan stood up abruptly, pacing the room as he tried to process the bombshell Alicia had dropped. "And now you're pregnant," he said, his voice bitter, "with his child." Alicia nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "I understand if you want me to leave," she said softly. "I'll pack my things and—" "No," Nathan interrupted, surprising her. He turned to face her, his expression a complex mix of emotions. "You're my wife, Alicia. Despite everything, I still love you. And that child, innocent of all this, deserves a stable home." Alicia looked up at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "What are you saying, Nathan?" He took a deep breath, seeming to age years in that moment. "I'm saying we'll get through this, together. If you want to, we can raise this child as our own. No one needs to know the truth." Tears welled up in Alicia's eyes as the full impact of Nathan's words hit her. Despite her betrayal, he was willing to stand by her, to accept a child that wasn't his own. In that moment, she saw the true depth of his love and the strength of his character. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan nodded solemnly. "It won't be easy, Alicia. We have a lot of work to do to rebuild trust, but I'm willing to try if you are." Alicia rose and embraced her husband, sobbing into his chest. As Nathan's arms encircled her, she felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way through this mess she had created. But even as she clung to Nathan, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. She had underestimated Ethan once before. Would he truly let go so easily? As night fell over Sycamore Grove, Alicia couldn't shake the feeling that her troubles were far from over. As weeks passed, Alicia and Nathan worked to rebuild their marriage. They attended couples therapy, had long, honest conversations, and slowly began to reconnect. Alicia threw herself into preparing for the baby, transforming the spare room into a nursery, and reading every parenting book she could find. Nathan, true to his word, supported her every step of the way, attending doctor's appointments and even suggesting names for the child he had chosen to accept as his own. However, the specter of Ethan Reeves loomed large over their attempted reconciliation. Alicia had cut off all contact with him, changing her phone number and arranging for another instructor to take over his yoga classes. She hoped that with time and distance, the whole affair would fade into a regrettable memory. But Ethan had other plans. As Alicia's due date approached, he began to have second thoughts about his initial reaction. The possibility of fatherhood, which had seemed so terrifying at first, now held a certain appeal. He imagined himself as a doting dad, with a child who might inherit his good looks and charm. More importantly, he realized that a child, especially one born to a respected doctor's wife, could be the perfect fodder for publicity, potentially launching his acting career into the spotlight. One evening, as Alicia was leaving her yoga studio, she found Ethan waiting for her in the parking lot. Her heart raced as he approached, a familiar smile playing on his lips. "Alicia," he said, his voice soft and persuasive, "we need to talk." She shook her head, backing away. "There's nothing to talk about, Ethan. Please, just leave me alone." But Ethan persisted, following her to her car. "I've been thinking about the baby," he said. "Our baby. I made a mistake before. I want to be involved." Alicia felt a chill run down her spine. "It's not your baby, Ethan," she lied, her voice trembling. "It's Nathan's. We're happy, and we're going to raise this child together." Ethan's expression darkened. "Don't lie to me, Alicia. I know the timing. That child is mine, and I have rights." Before Alicia could respond, a familiar voice called out across the parking lot. "Is everything all right here?" Nathan asked, approaching them with a concerned look on his face. Alicia had never been so relieved to see her husband. "Everything's fine," she said quickly. "Ethan was just leaving." Ethan looked from Alicia to Nathan, his jaw clenching. Without another word, he turned and walked away. But the look he gave Alicia as he left sent shivers down her spine. This wasn't over. In the days that followed, Ethan's presence became a constant shadow in Alicia's life. He sent her messages from new numbers, pleading for a chance to talk. He showed up at her favorite cafes and shops, always with the same request. He wanted to be part of the baby's life. Alicia confided in Nathan about Ethan's persistence, and together they decided to take legal action. They filed for a restraining order, hoping it would be enough to keep Ethan at bay. For a while, it seemed to work. Ethan's messages stopped, and Alicia no longer saw him around town. But the peace was short-lived. One night, as Alicia was home alone while Nathan worked a late shift at the hospital, she heard a noise downstairs. Thinking Nathan had come home early, she called out his name. When there was no response, fear gripped her heart. Quietly, she made her way down the stairs, her hand protectively cradling her swollen belly. In the dim light of the living room, she saw a figure standing by the window. As her eyes adjusted, she recognized Ethan. "What are you doing here?" she gasped, reaching for her phone. Ethan turned to face her, his eyes wild and desperate. "I can't let you keep my child from me, Alicia," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. "I've tried to reason with you, but you've left me no choice." As he stepped towards her, Alicia saw something glint in his hand, a knife. Panic surged through her as she realized the full extent of Ethan's instability. "Ethan, please," she begged, backing away slowly. "Think about what you're doing. This isn't you." But Ethan's face was set in grim determination. "This is the only way," he muttered, more to himself than to Alicia. "If I can't have my child, then neither can you or Nathan." Alicia's survival instincts kicked in. She turned and ran, her pregnant body slowing her down as she heard Ethan's footsteps behind her. She made it to the kitchen, frantically searching for a weapon to defend herself. As Ethan entered the kitchen, Alicia grabbed a heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove. With all her might, she swung it at him, catching him off guard. The pan connected with the side of Ethan's head with a sickening thud, and he crumpled to the floor. Shaking and sobbing, Alicia fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. As she waited for help to arrive, she kept a wary eye on Ethan's still form, the full horror of what had just transpired washing over her. In that moment, as sirens wailed in the distance, Alicia realized that her actions tonight would have consequences that would ripple far beyond just her and Nathan. The life growing inside her, the innocent child who had no part in this tangled web of lies and betrayal, would be born into a world forever changed by the events of this night. The aftermath of that fateful night unfolded like a surreal nightmare for Alicia. Police swarmed the house, their harsh questions and probing looks making her feel like a criminal rather than a victim. Nathan rushed home from the hospital, his face ashen with worry and shock as he held Alicia close, his hand protectively covering her belly. Ethan, still unconscious, was rushed to the hospital under police guard. The gravity of the situation hit Alicia as she watched the ambulance speed away, its sirens piercing the quiet suburban night. She had defended herself and her unborn child, but at what cost? In the days that followed, Alicia's world became a whirlwind of police statements, legal consultations, and media frenzy. The story of the pregnant yoga instructor who fought off her attacker was too sensational for the local news to ignore. Reporters camped outside their home, hungry for any tidbit of information about the Hartleys and their connection to Ethan Reeves. As the investigation progressed, the full extent of Ethan's obsession came to light. Police found a journal in his apartment detailing his plans to kidnap Alicia and the baby. His computer revealed countless hours of research on paternity rights and ways to prove he was the father. The aspiring actor had spiraled into a dangerous delusion, convinced that Alicia and the baby were his ticket to fame and fortune. The district attorney decided to press charges against Ethan for breaking and entering, attempted kidnapping, and assault with a deadly weapon. But as Alicia sat in the witness stand during the preliminary hearing, she felt no satisfaction. Looking at Ethan, his head bandaged and his eyes vacant, she saw not a criminal, but a broken man whose life had been derailed by their affair just as surely as hers had been. As Alicia's due date approached, the media circus began to die down, but the emotional toll of the ordeal weighed heavily on her and Nathan. Their marriage, which had been slowly healing, now faced new strains. Nathan's initial supportiveness gave way to moments of doubt and resentment. There were nights when Alicia would find him sitting alone in the dark, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at nothing. On a cold January morning, Alicia went into labor. The delivery was long and difficult, mirroring the tumultuous journey that had led to this moment. But when the nurse placed the tiny, wailing bundle in Alicia's arms, all the pain and fear seemed to melt away. She looked down at her daughter's face, a perfect blend of her features and Ethan's, and felt an overwhelming surge of love and protectiveness. Nathan, standing by her side, gazed at the baby with a complex mix of emotions playing across his face. When he finally held her, His eyes glistening with unshed tears, he whispered, "She's beautiful, Alicia. She's ours." In that moment, Alicia allowed herself to hope that perhaps they could move past the trauma and build a life together, the three of them. But life rarely follows the path we envision. As months passed, the strain of raising a child born of such complicated circumstances began to show. Nathan, despite his best efforts, couldn't fully shake the knowledge that the baby wasn't biologically his. Alicia, consumed by guilt and the demands of new motherhood, struggled to reconnect with her husband. Their arguments, once rare, became more frequent. They fought about everything: Nathan's long hours at the hospital, Alicia's reluctance to return to teaching yoga, and the unspoken presence of Ethan in their lives. The baby, whom they named Sophia, became both the glue holding them together and the wedge driving them apart. A year after Sophia's birth, Nathan accepted a prestigious position at a hospital across the country. He presented it to Alicia as a fresh start, a chance to leave behind the whispers and sidelong glances of Sycamore Grove. But as Alicia packed up their life, she couldn't shake the feeling that this move was less about new beginnings and more about Nathan's desire to distance himself from the constant reminder of her betrayal. As for Ethan, he pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. The last Alicia heard, he was serving time in a minimum security prison, undergoing therapy, and, ironically, teaching yoga to fellow inmates. On their last night in Sycamore Grove, Alicia stood in Sophia's room, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in her crib. She thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment: the loneliness, the passion, the fear, and the love. She thought about Nathan and how, despite everything, he had chosen to stand by her and love a child that wasn't his. She thought about Ethan and how a moment of weakness had altered the course of so many lives. As she turned to leave the room, Alicia caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was older, wiser, and infinitely more complex than the yoga instructor who had first caught Ethan's eye. She had made mistakes, grievous ones, but she had also found strength she never knew she possessed. Tomorrow they would leave Sycamore Grove behind and embark on a new chapter. Alicia didn't know what the future held, whether her marriage to Nathan would survive the ongoing aftershocks of her affair, or if Sophia would one day learn the truth about her parentage. But as she closed the nursery door behind her, Alicia made a silent promise to her daughter. No matter what happened, she would face it with the same courage and determination that had brought them through the darkest of times. In the quiet of the night, as the rest of Sycamore Grove slept, Alicia Hartley took a deep breath and prepared to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The yoga instructor's forbidden love had indeed led to deadly deception, but it had also paved the way for redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love in its many complex forms.